I'll keep my comments fairly brief. I was in church, in my little church in West yesterday, in the big town of West where I live. And there's, not counting Easter and Christmas, on a regular Sunday, as my kids used to call them, like yesterday, there's about 40 to 45 of us. I see some folks with West connections right here in the middle section. But anyway, one of the things we do every Sunday is, in our bulletin, we have a prayer list. Lex, we have a list. I kid people and say, you don't want to get on that list because there's only one way to get off of it. Y'all probably all know what that way is. But at any rate, our pastor will remind everybody of who's on the prayer list in our community or loved ones of family members, that kind of thing. And then he'll say, do we need to add anybody? And then after that, he'll say, well, Jason, give us an update. You put Lex on here. How's Lex doing? So, I mean, it's pretty open and give and take. Well, he stops in the middle of that Sunday and he says, y'all, Libby, that's his wife. He said, Libby and I pray for Jason every day. And he said, I want y'all to add him to y'all's list and pray for him every day. He's got a lot of pressure on him. And, of course, after the events of last week in the house, he sees me blowing up his news feeds and that sort of thing. So I think that's obviously what prompted his prayer for me and encouraging my fellow church members to do that. But anyway, he stopped. He goes, and Jason's got a lot. He said, I manage a congregation. He said, but he's got a congregation of, he said, how many people do you have, Jason? And I said, well, we have 122 members counting me, but the problem is, this weekend, they're finding out that we have 2.9 million Mississippians who are very passionate on issues surrounding not only public education, but tax dollars and private education and everything that goes with that. So it was an interesting time. You know, I have lots of folks in the education community that are in our church, so there's plenty of give and take there. But to John's point earlier, when we started this journey in the legislature and when I found myself in the Speaker's office, I committed to my members and to folks who were willing to listen and support me in our campaign and in my campaign. I wanted to spend our time on big issues, on things that do actually move the needle for every Mississippian, things that y'all think about in your business when you wake up in the morning. How are we going to do this, this, or this? Not things that you might see on my Facebook page or X feed and say, what is he doing now? Why? And it gets me a good click on there, or a bunch of clicks, but it doesn't really actually do anything for our people. So we've committed to spending our time, for better or worse, depending on where you are on any particular issue that we're tackling, we've decided to spend our time on those big things. And so John talked about student funding formulas and tax reform and all the things that we've been through over the last few years in my brief time as Speaker, which now is kind of seeming like, you know, what do they say, dog years or whatever. It kind of feels like that some days. But it's been a challenge and it has been a reward to be a part of a team in the House and fellow House members on both sides of the aisle, and certainly in my Republican caucus, but on both sides of the aisle, when it comes to trying to find the best outcomes for our state and for our people. And when you start moving around the cheese a little bit on the table, folks get real nervous real fast. And that doesn't hit home any more than it does when you start talking about K-12 education in our state. I wanted to spend a few minutes today among our business leaders here, those of you who are part of MBA. And John, I need to commend you and Derek and Scott on y'all's, maybe this is y'all's first big formal event as the new alliance has been formed. But I think you're to be commended for forming what is certainly going to be a stronger, more unified voice of Mississippi businesses that makes our job in the legislature a little easier in that y'all are unified and able to communicate your messages and the things that are important to Mississippi businesses in a more unified way that gives clear direction for policymakers on issues that are important to y'all. So I look forward to that relationship only being strengthened and even more streamlined with y'all's new alliance. So I want to commend you on that. This is my third session as Speaker, and it seems so far we've started our first two sessions before this session. And I tell people, boy, this is a critical session. This is a big deal. We got a lot of stuff going on. But I think that's just the nature every year. But again, this year, we are kind of at a critical point. Now, we have chosen for better or worse. Education reform is our main thing, if you will, for this session. Now, certainly we're going to deal with issues surrounding PERS, and certainly we're going to deal with issues as it surrounds the state budget as a whole and infrastructure. There's so many other items that are important even to some of you in this room on different issues. But we're going to spend the bulk of our time on education reform. And whether we talk about changing that student funding formula from 2 years ago or whether we talk about House Bill 1 from last year, we have focused on uplifting every Mississippian with the policies that we make. And I believe those kind of big issues is why we've been able to garner support from groups such as this group. Many of you last week were willing to publish a letter in support of education freedom and school choice and put your name on a letter that told our state and citizens everywhere and other business leaders that, hey, this is where I stand on this issue. And while they may or may not care what a stinking politician wants to tell them on the issue, they do respect the voice of our leading businessmen and women in this state. And they sit up and take notice when y'all are willing to put your name on something. And so for those of you in this room, I understand that was different than MBA, but at the same time, it's many of the same people. So I want to thank those of you in this room who were willing to do that. Y'all aren't unfamiliar with the House's position of going into one big issue and staying there and trying to make a difference. And this session, we're going to focus in 2026 on just that. Over the last decade, our state has demonstrated that thoughtful, student-focused reform can deliver real results. Once ranked near the bottom, I don't need to tell this group, nationally ranked at or near the bottom in almost every metric measured in our education system. Mississippi now leads the nation in gains. I'm not saying we're first in every category, but in gains, we lead the nation. And going from ranked near the bottom nationally, I've told y'all this before, but when we go to out-of-state conferences with other policymakers and legislative leaders in other states, most years we hope they don't ask us any questions, much less want to get into. Most of them don't want to ask us questions because they don't want to mimic what we're doing. But it has been really cool to see that turn around, whether it's our economic gains that have been led by many of you in this room or whether it's been our education gains led by our educators and some thoughtful policy decisions and changes that I've been lucky or fortunate enough to be a part of. We're not last, and it is cool to be from Mississippi. And folks actually want our opinion and want our blueprint specifically on those two issues. And it has certainly not always been that way. As we celebrate this transformation that maybe we throw around too much of this idea of the Mississippi miracle. But I would tell you that House Bill 2 and the Mississippi Education Freedom Act, as we call it, intends to build directly on that success. It expands, yes, educational opportunity, but it strengthens a lot of proven instructional strategies that we need to expand into other areas, into our middle schools, in mimicking third grade reading gate and other things and taking it forward. It empowers parents to make the best decisions for their kids and their future. This legislation is about freedom for sure, but it's also about results and investing in Mississippi's future. Gains in education are not theoretical. The ones we've enjoyed and that are measured by folks some that don't really like us that well. They are measured and they are real and acknowledged by all. They are nationally recognized, and I would tell you they are the result of conservative policy, as some have questioned, but hard work by our educators. Nobody's taking all the credit for this, but I can tell you, I was here when those fights, I was new and a newbie and didn't know what was going on a lot, but in 2012 and 2013, when we were enacting some of those reforms, I got called some really bad names. And a lot of my colleagues did too. And now a lot of those people that were name calling are celebrating the gains that they fought so hard against those policies being enacted. And this idea, of course, that success has lots of fathers and failure, not so many. I'm not going to take my advice from those same people that fought so hard on those things that we now celebrate when they're telling me now that I'm on a fool's errand in examining a way forward for us to give our parents some choice in a measured, common sense, conservative way. I think we're past that in 2026, in Mississippi, when it comes to our children's education, remember this, they don't get a do-over. We don't get to do a study committee and see how it looks 4 years from now. They're gone. They're out of high school and trying to make it in college or in one of your businesses. We don't get a do-over. They don't get a do-over. We've talked about it long enough. And good is not good enough. We can do even better. We can climb higher in all our measures and metrics that we're measured in. We got to keep our foot on the gas. I want to commend our governor who's been willing to do just that. He could be taking a victory lap on all the things that Bill Cork just talked about. He has led on so many of those issues. It'd be real easy for his last 2 years in the mansion to take a victory lap and enjoy that. But instead, he has agreed and is willing to engage and embark on this policy initiative to bring some choice and some reform to our education system as it centers around what is best for our kids. The lesson of the Mississippi Miracle for me as a policymaker is this: clear, bold, conservative education reforms work. And the evidence of that is we are being copied by not only red states, but blue states all over the country. They work. And when we focus on students over systems and focus on outcomes over status quo and results over rhetoric, students shine, our educators perform, and we are better for it. This Mississippi Education Freedom Act applies that same philosophy to this next phase of our reform. It affirms the fundamental right of parents to direct the education of their children. It extends proven literacy supports, and it strengthens math instruction with an M3 initiative that mirrors our third grade reading gate, but applies that to math and our 4th through 8th grade students. Most importantly, and above all else, House Bill 2, in all facets, prioritizes students, ensuring that every child, regardless of zip code, has some pathway to education and lifelong success. If y'all got the 10 smartest businessmen and women in this room together today and sat around a table in some comfortable chairs like that and started with a blank sheet of paper and said, we're going to design an education system for Mississippi. But there's one caveat. Parents have no say. Who could you get to vote for that around that table? Nobody. And that's the world we live in today. Now, you can tell me, well, they have mobility. If they have resources, there are ways they can gain the system and get into a different, better public school, or maybe avail themselves to private school if they can gather the resources for that. We are telling people this is it. And yes, we hold our public schools accountable. We have a pretty rigid accountability model that they hate having to deal with. They'd rather be teaching kids instead of teaching the test, but we hold them to this standard, and we do that. The true accountability is when you see where parents want to send their kids and where they want to be. Some people are worried about what's going to happen to these failing schools. We do have an accountability system, but I could argue with you that it's more of a transparency system, because even when we find out a school has been chronically failing for years, we still send all the state money there. We don't hold any of it back, and we still tell our kids, that's where you're going, and if you don't like it, pull up and move. I'm not for hollowing out communities in our state, family businesses that have been here for generations. They simply want some options when it comes to their education. They're not asking to change the world of K-12 education, especially public education. We all acknowledge we have great public schools. We have 435,000 kids in public school in our state, about 45,000 in private school, and about 20,000 are being homeschooled. This isn't about dismantling the gains. This isn't a shot at public school. This is something for parents that is lacking in our current system. In 2026, we should be able to recognize that parents understand their children's needs better than any policymaker or politician or any system ever could. House Bill 2 establishes Magnolia student accounts that enable families, yes, to access private schools, specialized instruction, therapies, and other educational services that best fit their child's needs. It ensures that all families, even regardless of income or zip code, have some real choice. Now I hear people say, well, you're not providing transportation or you're not providing enough money, that won't pay all the... I get it. In a perfect world, everybody would have all the money they need and we'd have education. But we're trying to do this in a small conservative step with guardrails, and let's see where we get. Let's see where the demand is. Let's see what comes from that. But it's measured, it's capped, as we have dealt with other states around us that have enacted school choice programs and universal school choice. They all, to a fault, said, be sure you put guardrails around it and cap it and go slow. This is going slow. We have 500,000 students in K-12 education in our state, allowing 12,500 kids a chance. And yes, it has income requirements before anybody else at higher levels of income in their households have an opportunity. So the resources are directed at those that need it the most, that are trapped in some of these places. It expands that opportunity and removes barriers to what I call high-quality public school options. And maybe, by the way, House Bill 2 allows them to avail themselves to another public school in proximity that they can get to if that school has capacity. And keep in mind, we are fully preserving the decision-making authority of the local school board to accept students who want to transfer to their districts. Nobody has taken away the receiving school district's autonomy when it comes to deciding if they're going to allow kids from other public schools to come into their district. No local tax dollars are following a kid to another public school district. Education policy should ultimately be judged by results, whether students graduate prepared for careers, college, or military service. The Mississippi Education Freedom Act strengthens financial literacy and the requirements around that. It expands career-aligned learning opportunities, and it connects high school education more closely to workforce needs, something that should be near and dear to all of your hearts, as I know it is. It enhances leadership development and workforce readiness. There's a $10 million junior ROTC pilot program providing students structured pathways that build discipline, responsibility, and preparation for military service and civilian careers. It's an exciting part of House Bill 2 as well. These reforms represent a long-term investment in Mississippi's kids and our economic future. Now, the opposition has been very loud in sharing red herrings and inaccuracies in this policy debate and argument. And I welcome the debate. But so many of my members are upset about the politics of the debate. But nobody comes in and says, this policy is wrong. I hadn't heard anybody argue that a parent shouldn't be able to decide where their kid goes to school. Now, I understand that's got some limitations, and we don't have an unlimited bank account, so we have to be cautious and conservative about how we do it. Those are those same people that putting out those red herring arguments that I alluded to early that opposed every education reform package and proposal over the last 10 years. I have tried to not shy away from addressing those red herring arguments. One question that we constantly hear is, how will this impact failing schools? But I have an issue with the premise of that question. Shouldn't we be asking this first? Certainly, let's think about how it impacts our public schools, but shouldn't the equation start by this? How are failing schools impacting our kids? That's where the conversation should start. And once you get past that, I'm willing to filter all of the factors as we consider how to keep our public schools on the right track. This isn't about withholding funding from them. We have funded public schools at a historic level and put our money where our mouth is. If you don't believe it, we're spending almost 50 cents of every dollar you send to the state of Mississippi on K-12 public education. That reflects the priority that it is. I'm asking you to look at the legislation with an open mind as you interact with your employees and your business colleagues, and look at it through the lens of what are we doing, what is best for the child, instead of what's going to happen to this school system. It should start and end with what is best for the child. I'm incredibly proud of our House members. I see a few hanging around the room here that stood up for kids and families last week and voted for House Bill 2. like me, they probably got a few bullet wounds to show for it. And I may need to put them on the prayer list at my church for sure. It's about what is best for our current kids and future generations in Mississippi. And that momentum, it's slow and it's a hot political topic for sure, but it is starting to build and we see it building. The White House has gotten involved. Our governor is involved. Our Republican women are driving on this issue. Our faith-based organizations, our Baptists, our Catholics, our Pentecostals in the state have all written letters of support for House Bill 2, seeing the positives of it. We acknowledge that it's scary territory. Let's get it right. We've invited our Senate colleagues as we have now released House Bill 2 and it has gone to the Senate. It will be the property of the Senate probably in the next 5 minutes or so. We want to engage with them in dialogue and debate and compromise on the issue. We don't think we've got everything right and perfect, and we're open to that. But we want the conversation and we want the give and take that comes with it. Giving parents options is essential to improving outcomes and ensuring that every child finds a learning environment that best fits their needs. Earlier this week, our governor opted us in to the One Big Beautiful Bill, federal tax credits for school choice. It's a dollar-for-dollar federal tax credit of up to $1,700 for eligible taxpayers. That is a great first step. It will take some time to build those accounts and get that going in our state. We hope we are able to complement it with the policy in House Bill 2 as we move forward. As we've gained this support, and again, I've already alluded to you 101 business leaders who signed that letter. I thank you for that support. And with that growing support, my hope is that the state Senate will engage seriously in the policy discussion with the House and our education leaders on this issue and finally bring some real education freedom to Mississippi families. I'm eager to work with them on it, and I welcome that debate. We're now completely surrounded, as I said, by our sister states. We say we are competing with them on almost every level in the game, economically, quality of life, all the things that we see and know in our great communities in the state. This is one more of those. We compete on this. Make no mistake about it. It's time for us to get in this game too. Whatever is best for kids, whatever is best for families, and a family-first workforce means talent attraction and retention for Mississippi employers and for our state as a whole. Providing options, flexibility, and resources. Those are things your employees ask of you in the work environment and the way that y'all deliver your products and services. It's no different here. Parents want options and opportunities for their kids, especially where they're stuck in failing or underperforming school districts. Those people are your employees. They're our constituents, and most of all, they're taxpayers. And they should have a say in how this moves forward, regardless of their zip code or their income. We had a great deal of what I would call advancements and policy wins because of our partnership with this room and this group and with MEC and BIPAC and MMA that is now the beast that is MBA, John. We stood together, as you alluded to, on major policy and political victories. And just like any transformational policy, change can be, and certainly it is, uncomfortable. And in my case, it's sometimes difficult with 121 other members. But the people in this room know better than most that it takes bold initiatives backed up by courageous actions to allow Mississippi to reach its full potential. I am asking all of you in the Mississippi Business Alliance to be bold and courageous, be supportive of House Bill 2. If there are specific problems or issues you have with it, reach out to us and let's work on those. We've garnered the momentum that we have in Mississippi, known as the Mississippi Miracle, and our other wins. Let's not rest on those successes, and let's build on them. We value the relationship we have with you and our Mississippi business community, and our door is always open. Thank you for the time today and for listening. We have a narrow focus, yes, on education reform, but we are always open to our business community and the direction you would have us to go. thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all this evening.